Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Failure Effect. This week is going to be a little bit different from what we've been doing over the past weeks because it's got a little bit of a personal element to it regarding myself. This week we'll be speaking to Mr. Joseph Odindo, who has been one of the most leading lights, the biggest leading lights in the media industry over the past, how many decades has it been? 3, 4?
4.
Okay, just about 4 decades. Now, a lot of people will tell you that if they didn't go to journalism school, what they did is they went to the school of Mr. Odindo because he has been managing editor at both the Nation Media Group and the Standard. Have I missed anything out? You've worked at the Weekly Review.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's mentored very many of us. Personally, I never studied journalism. I went to the school of Mr. Odindo. And so it is with great pleasure that we do this today. We spent some time with him listening to his story and also examining the career-changing decision that he made that then turned his world upside down and taught him a few things about how journalism in the social media age works. So before we get there, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm curious about where you started, because the thing is, you know all of us. We are your children, so to speak. So you've watched us grow. You've watched us grow in the profession. And I'm not sure that anyone has ever sat down and asked you where you came from.
Actually, my background is a bit like yours.
Okay.
Nobody taught, I didn't go to any journalism school.
Uh-huh.
I had a lot of interest in journalism when I was in school.
Yes.
And I went to Staré Boy Center.
Mm-hmm.
And right from school, I found my way into the newsroom as a correspondent.
Okay.
And because I taught myself a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had a head start on many people.
Mm-hmm.
Here I was straight from school, but with quite a bit of skill.
Right.
How to write. I knew what an intro was. So we started off as errand boys, messengers, hang around the office.
Yes.
Hang around here, find something to do.
Okay.
Go to the courts, process a press release.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And after a while, we found ourselves on a recruitment list.
Mm-hmm.
The year I was given my appointment letter at Nation, I also received my calling letter to the university.
Wow.
And I had to make a decision. Mm-hmm. So after about 6 months of working as a trainee reporter, I went to Kenyatta University.
Okay.
Yeah. Did my education degree and came straight back to the newsroom.
Right.
Yeah. So that was sometime in 1981. Started off as a sub-editor. Mm-hmm. I was a sub-editor most of my life.
Okay, so please explain, because I'm pretty sure there's many people watching this who
would
don't
know what a sub-editor is. Well, in old media,
yeah. Okay.
There was the production process involved generating content, which was largely writing.
Yes.
Going out, reporting. Mm-hmm. You came and wrote your story and handed it over to your news editor, who then presented it to people called sub-editors.
Okay.
Now, the sub-editors were the ones who edited it, the copy, or rather the story.
Yeah.
Checked it for factual accuracy.
Yeah.
Literally sometimes rewrote it. You might not recognize your story the next day.
Yes.
But it still bore your name.
Yes.
And they also assembled the pages.
Yeah.
So it was a craft which has a digital equivalence right now, in the sense that the people who edit the videos and mix the sound and all that. But primarily, they're the people who determined what the newspaper would look like.
Yes.
So they were wordsmiths. They were also skilled in processing images, deciding what size an image should be, which is the most suitable picture.
Yeah.
Then how a page should look like. So you combined some design, a sense of design, a sense of aesthetics with a command of the writing skill.
Right.
Those were sub-editors. That's what I was most of my life. But I did a lot of writing on the side because I was always interested in writing.
Okay, so this is in the 80s.
Yeah.
And this was a very manual job.
Extremely manual.
Because you couldn't trim a picture.
You couldn't change a paragraph, this cut and paste.
Yes.
You had to literally, actually, the phrase cut and paste comes from the manual process of cutting that paragraph.
Yes.
And pasting it with glue. Where you wanted it.
Board, yes.
Yes, where you want it onto another page.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from, cut and paste. you couldn't shuffle a sentence,
Yeah.
or a word, simply swap and say, okay, it should come at the end of the. You sat down at a typewriter and rewrote it.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if that person had written 12 pages,
Yeah.
you ended up writing a new 12 pages. Yeah.
Oh my
So it was a very
goodness.
manual job. Amazingly,
Yeah.
the newspaper came out at exactly the same time it still comes out. And it still reached Namanga, Busia, Moyale at the same time. I don't know what happened to all the time which has been saved by computerization.
We got lazier in the newsroom.
Yeah.
Okay, so how long did you sub-edit for?
I was a sub-editor from 1981 when I came back from university to sometime in 89, 88. I became chief sub-editor of the Nation.
How old are you at this time?
I must have been around 27 or 26.
Wow, chief sub.
Yeah.
You that's a very.
I was quite young. In fact, for me, that was the time I went through my first debacle.
Okay.
Yeah, most people didn't know that.
Okay.
Because I got into trouble on something I had done which was wrong, but unintentionally.
Okay.
I was the chief, but I was doing a lot of the work myself after the team had gone.
Yeah.
Extremely tired at about 9 p.m. And I made a mistake on copy.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was bad because it concerned the principal shareholder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to leave. Yeah. Eventually.
Yeah.
And it was abrupt. I was chief sub. I was young. And although at that age, you don't have a family, and so it's disappointing to you as a person. Yeah. But the burden of moving on is much easier. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I left and went to the Kenya Times. Okay. Yeah, which was just beginning. Yeah. Where we were a whole team of ex-nation people with a mission. Right. To show the nation that it could be done better.
This so history just repeats itself
everything you see now has happened before. Okay. All right. There are always some young idealistic people who are this, and they are really the forces of change. Yeah. When you think about it. Yeah. Because they have passion, they have drive, they have a vision, and they are willing to sacrifice. Yeah. So there we were under Philip Ochieng, a whole gang, Amboka, Andere, Magesha Ngwiri, Gray Fombe, and he was parading us on the front page as, what do you call it? He's calling us the A-team or something like that. And so basically selling the nation, finally, you met your match. We didn't know that within a year, most of us would be back there.
Back at the nation.
Yeah. Anyway, I stayed at the Times for close to a year. I was not happy with the internal politics. Okay. Yeah. Basically, I am a servant. Okay. Yeah. I want to be given work and I do it, and I do it well. Yeah. That was my training. That's my personality. That's my inclination. I don't have time to play politics. Yeah. To make friends, to carry favor with a certain boss. Yeah. And that was the culture at the Kenya Times. People wanted to reach the Secretary General of KANU, which goes to the President Moi, and all this. Yes. So I opted out. Okay. And Hilary Ngweno, who the publisher of the Weekly Review at the time, was thinking of launching a human interest magazine. And so he asked me, look, come over and to try it out. Okay. So I left. Okay. And the birth of Echo magazine took rather long. It was a long gestation period. Yeah, I think I sat idle for more than a year and a half, just doing the groundwork, preparing. Right, he didn't have the money, he was not ready. But we finally launched it. Echo was supposed to be Kenya's answer to People magazine of the US. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, Hillary had two ideas. He wanted to do Echo magazine, and he wanted to do something equivalent to the Reader's Digest. Right. He called it the African Digest. Okay. Yeah. So we said, let's do Echo first. Yeah. And I launched Echo, totally green, new to magazines, but I loved feature writing. Yeah. And that's where I learned product development. Okay. Yeah. I learned team building. It was he was very patient with me and gave us time and,
Yeah.
allowed us to make mistakes.
Okay.
Yeah. And in those 2 years, he ran up huge bills. We trying out these, doing dummies, destroying them. Yeah. And I am eternally grateful because that's where I really cut my teeth.
Okay.
Yeah. So we launched Echo Magazine, Human Interest Monthly. Echo was a good product, but was ahead of its time.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the same time, the dynamics of the industry didn't favor it. Yeah. I did it for 2 years or so. And then I felt the need to go for further education.
Okay.
So I went off to Wales, did my master's in journalism, and then came back to launch the East African, now based on the experience that I had.
With product development.
Product development.
Had you settled down at this time? Were you married? Did you have children?
Yes. At the time, my firstborn, we had our firstborn.
Okay.
In fact, they stayed behind when I went to school, back to school. Now, the thing about going back to school, and this is a point I would like to make about this industry, is that it has never been able to reconcile, and they need to resolve this, to reconcile the formal requirement for a degree, academic credentials, with the fact that this is a business of doing.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a business of talent. And it is even in the digital era. It's about, do you have it or don't you have it?
Yes.
Yeah. And if you can do it and I can buy your product, should it matter that I don't have a degree?
Yes.
Yeah? That's the reality I came up against.
Yeah. Okay.
I could do a whole magazine. I could edit. I was chief sub of the nation. But everywhere I went, I was always reminded, you don't have a degree in journalism. But I was doing journalism.
Yes.
That's why I took a year off and went to Wales, did my master's, where I have to confess, I did not learn anything new in that class. I only collected my degree and came back.
Okay.
Anyway, I came back to launch the East African. The project was already moving. Yeah, and again, we worked with Jerry Lockran, and it was one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done in my life.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the most fulfilling. We worked for a year, or I think a year and a half or so. And then sometime in 1994, we launched the East African.
Right.
Yeah. And the rest is history. It's still going on.
Yes.
What that entailed, of course, was the nation was launching the first newspaper it had ever it had brought to the market since being born in 1960. It had not launched a new product.
Oh, yes, because there's only the Nation.
Yeah,
and
the Nation and Taifa and Sunday Nation.
Yeah.
And that's what it has always been. So this was the first time they were actually doing a new product.
Right.
And we were all educating each other, but at the same time, they were also becoming entrepreneurs, if you like.
Yes.
It was a new experience to them. Yeah. The good thing about the East African is that the principal shareholder had his heart in it. Yeah. And he was also willing to give us room to try out things.
Okay.
Yeah, we worked with Jerry Lockran, traveled across East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. I was across East Africa for the first time. Yeah, this was going to be my market. This was going to be the source of my news. And the product changed. It started off as a regional version of the Daily Nation.
Right.
And ended up being a semi-business publication. Yeah. After all the market research, what we realize is that you are not looking at for a mass readership product. You are looking for a niche product. Yeah. Targeting a very specific segment in all the society, all the three nations. And then there was a lot of information which came to light during the research. Yeah. But the long and short of it was that it would be fed with content from the three countries. It would be assembled in Nairobi, and it would be taken back to those markets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, communication when you're producing a media product. Speed, now you guys, with digital, it is instant.
Yeah.
And you put it out and the response is instant. Yeah. But you can imagine talking to people in Tanzania, discussing stories, the docket for the day, which you have sent through something called a fax machine.
Oh my,
Um,
yes, yes, no fax
and
machine.
it didn't come out from the other side.
Yeah.
So you're talking to them, they're waiting for it. The fax has not released the document.
Oh my goodness.
Technology was a
Mhm.
huge challenge.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because speed of communication was very important.
Mhm.
Then reconciling the level of journalism in the three countries.
Mhm.
But you know, media cannot be divorced from the political environment.
True.
So you are taking this product back to three different political environments.
Yes, with distinct
With very
challenges in
distinct
terms of,
cultures,
yes, yeah,
with distinct levels of tolerance.
yeah,
And then you are also talking about reading cultures.
Mhm.
Tanzania is predominantly Kiswahili.
yes,
Uganda is English. Kenya is English.
Mhm.
Yeah. So how will you find an equal level for
Yeah.
all this?
yeah,
So for us, it was constantly a process of learning.
Mhm.
And then building this team so that they can pull together.
yeah,
They're the Tanzanians, they're the Ugandans, they're the Kenyans, all with history.
Mhm.
And you know how the East African community broke up. Kenya was definitely not anybody's favorite.
yeah,
Yeah. So we were seen as the bully boys.
right,
Yeah, they have come back again
Yeah.
to bully us.
yeah.
Anyway, that's a different story.
Mhm.
Yeah. We launched the East African. We kept on modifying it as we went along. And I'm glad to see that it survives.
Yes.
Yeah, and that it is financially viable.
Yes.
And that it has retained a lot of the original DNA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has remained an issue-driven paper.
Mhm.
I only wish it could make this digital transition, you know?
Yeah.
Well.
Well, I think for me, what is testament to your creativity and dedication and the skill that you and Jerry put into the job is the fact that there are very few media products that survive past 5 years. Lots of media houses create things, play with them, and then collapse them.
It's true. True.
But this is still here.
It has survived. It has
Yeah.
survived because one,
Mhm.
because it is a paper pegged on the interests of the middle class and
Yes.
policymakers.
Yeah.
It is, in a way, it grows with the economies of these countries.
Yeah.
That's one. But two, and it also had its it had its teething problems.
Mhm.
I mean, it could easily have been closed down within the first 4 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Those who know will tell you about the debates that went on, whether or not it should abandon the original format and be more like the nation so that it carries more politics
Yeah.
and picks up sales.
Yeah.
The sales were low, and for a long time, the bean counters felt that this is not viable. Yeah, and it was, what is the editorial solution? Editorial solution is start carrying politics so that people buy. Yeah. So we argued, we said it's better to have fewer readers, fewer buyers, but they are of the class we are targeting.
Yes.
Yeah. Rather than have many, but they are a mix you can't sell. I'll give you an example. In the middle of this debate, Franco Luambo Makiadi died.
Right.
And I got hold of a book. The first book written about him. And I serialized it. The sales just went through the roof. In fact, the paper was being photocopied and sold at Uhuru Park. Yeah.
Well, he was a big musician, though.
Yeah, we just didn't know. But you see, it is a very good example of high sales, wrong content.
Yes. Yeah.
High sales, wrong content.
Yeah.
And circulation was so excited. 43,000 copies.
Wow.
And still selling. But who bought the paper? Is that the readership you wanted?
Yes.
Is that the readership you'll be able to sell to your advertisers?
Yeah.
And it was a very good lesson to us that, yes, you can actually get the circulation numbers if you want. Just tweak the content, have the salacious or very, what you call popcorn stuff, the content there. You'll get your readers. So for us, it was a lesson. Stick to the vision.
Yes.
Grow slowly.
Yes.
But be certain of sustainability.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that it's niche journalism, I suppose.
It is niche journalism.
And so at this point you had both technical experience in terms of journalism, and then you had business experience, in terms of managing.
I was actually picking up a lot of business knowledge
Yeah.
as I went along. The thing about me is, and it has helped me a lot, is that I read a lot. Even at that time, I'll tell you what people have problems in their marriage, early marriages. Some of them to do with money, some of them to do with maybe the personal habits.
Yes.
Mine was because of my reading habit. It really broke up my marriage. Because you could never separate me from reading material.
Oh, wow.
Whether I was at the breakfast table, I was dinner table, I was just lounging in bed, So one of the big decisions I had to make to save my marriage was to cut down.
You had to choose.
Yes.
You had to choose between your wife and the books.
The point about this is that reading a lot had exposed me to a lot of business knowledge, which many editors didn't have. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff. Communication was not like now. You just couldn't Google it and say how to produce a magazine. Yeah. There are people you had to contact. They send you material. You pay for it and all this. So I picked up a lot of knowledge about the commercial side of publishing just by reading, getting the right material, being in the right mailing lists. Yeah. And it helps a lot. Editorial leadership, even at that time. Yeah. Now you're worrying about monetizing content. At that time, it was really how do you fine-tune your content and align it to the needs of the marketplace?
Yes.
And that helped me a lot. Yeah, when we were positioning the East African, because I understood how much leeway you give to the commercial side. How do you align the editorial with the advertising?
Right.
Yeah. My role as editor, I appreciated quite early that I had to interrelate with our business partners. And I did a lot of traveling around the region. Yeah. Building contacts, pushing the brand, and basically just making it, giving it a presence in the marketplace.
So then you went on to become managing editor of the Nation.
Yes. I worked on the East African for 6 years or so. I think must have been 6 years. And when the Nation needed editorial leadership, I was asked to move over. Yeah. And I can't remember how many years I did at the Daily Nation.
It was a lot because that's where we first met.
Yes, you came on the Saturday magazine.
Yes, I did. And you were always like the one eye that we all needed to please. You were in charge of quality control. Like, you had a reputation for calling people at 5 a.m. Why is this word spelled like that?
Oh man, what a thing to be remembered for.
No. I mean, it's we
No,
needed
it is
that.
true. It was an habit, an old habit.
Yeah.
I used to read my paper very early.
Yeah.
As managing editor.
Yeah.
I moved over to the Nation. Nation had very specific challenges. Circulation was not bad.
Yeah.
But it had been stagnant.
Yeah.
2, the paper had been the same for a long time. So one of the things I was told, you need to refresh this newspaper.
Yeah.
You need to give it a new life. You need to deal with these circulation figures. And then we had a quality problem, which I was never very conscious of as an outsider.
Right.
But when I came in and saw the memos and the exchanges from the principal shareholders, there was a lot of concern about quality. Yeah, editing quality, writing quality. So there are some priorities that Wangezi Mwangi set for me. Very, very perceptive, very good boss, and a wonderful person to work under.
He was the editorial...
Wangezi was the editorial director.
Okay.
Yeah, previously editor-in-chief. Very, very thoughtful, very smart guy. Many people would intended to underestimate him.
Yeah.
But he brought a lot to the function. Yeah. Which made a difference for the Nation and took the group through some very politically difficult times. Yeah. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
It was Wangethi's idea actually to bring me in to launch the East African.
Okay.
Yeah. So when he asked me to go to the Daily Nation, he had a very clear set of objectives on what we needed to deal with. So one of the earliest things I had to do is I had to redesign the paper.
Okay.
And I'd been off daily newspapers for a long time. So we had to find a designer. And I remember it coincided with a trip I was taking to Brazil or someplace. So I went to the US and met the gentleman who had redesigned the New York Times. One of the most respected newspaper designers. Yeah, very smart old man. And I don't know what happened. I think I was very brash.
Oh.
Well, I was brash with you people as well. I mean, yeah, I mean, I was at that stage where I knew what I wanted.
Yeah.
And that is what needed to be done.
Yeah.
And that's what I was in the newsroom also, unfortunately or fortunately. So I had this first encounter meeting with Louis Silverstein. And we just did not hit it off.
Oh, no.
So I didn't realize.
Yeah.
We sat, we discussed the ideas until I came back here and he had already reached out to Wangethi or something. I think Wangethi tried to reach him. And it's like he didn't even want to fly to Kenya to talk to us.
Oh, no.
So Wangethi asked me, what did you do to this old man? So one of the things when we were redesigning the nation was we really had to patch up our relationship with Lou. Okay. Brilliant designer.
Yeah.
Brilliant guy. If you saw what he had done with the New York Times and even what he eventually did with the Nation. So one of the things I had to do on the Daily Nation was to redesign the paper. And it also entailed rethinking the sections. And that is where we changed the Saturday magazine from a general interest feature magazine to a women's magazine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm always, there's one thing that makes me very proud, that it lives to this day.
Yes.
It was one of the first women's magazine on a daily newspaper.
Yeah.
And then we also rethought the rest of the paper. These days, when people talk about relevance and resonance of media products, I always recall a conversation we had with Lou Silverstein at that time. Lou asked us, what is the main economic activity of Kenyans? And we all said agriculture.
Yeah.
So he said, so why is there no agricultural content in this paper?
Yes.
And we couldn't answer.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't believe this is a foreigner who's come in and is the one telling us there's a very big gap between your focus of your content, and the paper is now supposed to be about it's a community talking to itself. We are now developing a farming pullout in 2017, 2016. Seeds of gold.
Yes.
The standard is harvest. Yeah. Lou pointed this out 20 years before.
I see.
And the science section which the Nation introduced was a compromise. Nobody wanted to do agriculture. So they said, let's do science.
Yeah.
It will straddle both.
Yes.
So the redesign of the Nation at the time, when I look back, to me opened my eyes to the fact that media tends to get stuck in its ways.
Yeah.
And many editors will be honest with you and tell you that many times when they are remaking a product, they are basically pushing it where their whim will take them, as opposed to what the market demands.
Yes.
And thank God for analytics.
Yes.
Thank God for the digital era.
Yes.
You cannot fudge your way around this anymore.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
And for a long time, I think legacy media simply reflected the biases of its editors, of its owners.
Yes.
And poor consumers this thing was forced down your throat.
Yeah.
And they convinced themselves that people want to read politics.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you give them more politics. But how will they ever know what else is better and interesting if you don't expose them to?
And then you sort of find yourself, and I had this dilemma when I was the editor of the Saturday Nation, is trying to figure out, okay, I know in my gut that this human interest story will sell, but
yeah.
circulation keeps telling me politics is
That's
what
why we want more
is.
politics. We want more politics. In
Yeah.
fact, it has taken legacy media a long time to wake up and say we should be dancing to the tune of our readers,
Yes.
not the other way around.
Yes.
And for me, the best reflection of that was the Nairobian.
Yes.
Nairobian is the best illustration that actually there was always an opportunity in this market. And even now, we talk about declining circulation. It is not impossible to actually come up with a product which will sell enough to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, print product.
Yes.
Because it is happening in UK. They're still actually launching new products.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, with a very strong partnership, digital partnership.
Yes.
But the points of interest of news of media consumers, the points of interest haven't changed. The question is there a gap somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Nairobian came. Actually, the Nairobian at one time was selling far more than the Standard. Far more. The Nairobian was selling 100,000 plus.
Yeah.
The Standard was struggling at 70,000.
Yeah.
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 Why? Because they recognize that the world is not about the president, his deputy, MPs, MCAs, you call them out. People are talking about their daily lives out there.
Yes.
Yeah. Whose wife poured boiling water on whose husband?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
That's
Salacious content. So let's fast forward to, because remember, by this point, you are the journalist.
Yes.
You are the man.
Yeah.
And then Westgate happens.
Yes. Okay. I was at Nation. I worked on the Daily Nation.
Yeah.
I became editorial director. And as editorial director, I now was the answerable for journalism in all our products in the three countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania.
Yeah.
Now, the day Westgate happened, you know, every newspaper had its editor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't have to be there. Yeah. But it's just one of those things. I received a call from Wangevi, actually, whose son worked in an office next to Westgate. And he tells me, by the way, my son is telling me there's a lot of shooting at Westgate. There's a robbery, but it looks like a very big and daring robbery.
Right.
Yeah, I just thought I should let you know. So, and then immediately I got a text from somebody in the security system who told me terrorist attack at Westgate.
Right.
Yeah. So I turned. I was on the Eastern Bypass going to Ruiru. I used to farm a lot those days.
Okay.
So I was on my way to Thika. So I turned back, went to the office to just join them as they handled the story.
Right.
Yeah. And as I said, there was a managing editor. There's a whole team. They know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my presence was not really necessary. So they had already planned their stories. So by the time I got there, content was coming in. Stories were coming in, reporters were coming back. But the picture that was emerging was that this thing is much bigger than anybody ever thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the question was, how do we treat it? How do we actually capture it? So they had done many of their inside pages, and we now needed to make a decision on the final picture. And I remember we were all there. There was Mutiga, Obino.
Yeah.
Very smart guys who knew what they were doing. Yeah. Now, what many people don't realize is the impact that looking at raw content has on your judgment. There's a very big difference between what finally finds its way into the public domain,
right,
and what we sift through.
Yes.
Yeah, the process of choosing, the process of throwing this aside, rewriting, you know. We went through those pictures from Westgate, and they were horrifying, you know, pictures of husband and wife, you know, who had died in each other's arms in the car park. You know, close-ups of people's heads. Horrible, horrifying images.
Right.
From this, we were to pick images which one would convey the horror, the brutality of what Kenyans had just gone through. But at the same time, would respect taste.
Yeah.
Yeah, would not offend.
Yeah.
So the balance, but also would be dramatic
Yes.
enough.
Yes.
Now it's one of those things that eventually just boils down, becomes subjective. You know what the boundaries are. Yeah, you know what you are not supposed to. You're not supposed to put blood on people's breakfast table.
Yes.
You know you should respect the privacy of people, even who are dying or who have died. You know you have a duty to capture the drama of what actually happened. Your readers should get a sense of what was Westgate like. This was unprecedented.
Yeah.
So you can't capture it in words. Actually, it's better captured in pictures. So everybody made their choices. We got, first of all, the selection from the chief photographer. And he said, forget everything else. Just look at these. Then Obino looked at his. He picked what he wanted. I looked at them again. I made my choices. I think Mutiga came in also. Yeah.
And Mutiga was?
Mutiga was, I think, was a senior writer, but used to got one of those people the managing editor depended a lot on. Yeah, he had a very good mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So I remember we reduced the pictures to just about 6 or 7. So the question was, which one between these? And it's interesting that one of the first pictures which kind of was favored, but we cast aside, was, I think it was the one that eventually was used by the Standard.
Okay.
The one of the commando holding a baby.
Yes.
Yeah, and a gun.
Yeah.
But I remember the argument was, this is too sanitized.
Yeah.
It was like a walk in the park.
It doesn't convey the full
the
horror.
violence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The brutality of what happened.
Yeah.
So people say it's so clean. When you look at it, this man could be on a training session.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we said, no, we are cheating our readers. After all, they've also watched TV. So we said, we need a lot more activity. Actually, put it crudely, we need a little blood.
Okay.
Yeah. But without offending.
Yes.
So there was another one. We then saw others which came close to being active. And I remember we had actually settled on one when this other one appeared.
The one that eventually ended up on page 1.
Yes. And actually, I don't think it was by our photographer. I think it came through the wires.
Okay.
I think it came through the wires. Yes, it did. It came through the wires because this was the picture which ended up on the front page of the Daily Mail.
Right.
And was used big by the New York Times.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, it won an award eventually. Yes.
Wow. So that's vindication for what was about to happen to
now,
you.
that brings a point which I'll dwell on later about images, content, and the cultural setting in which you deliver it.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think it necessarily vindicates us, but it makes a point about which I'll want to dwell on.
Okay.
But the point is that when it came, we had virtually decided on another picture. Then the wire pictures came, and the photographer told us, hey, bye, guys, there's something more interesting here. And when we saw it, we all said, that is the picture.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Everybody said, this is the one. This is the one. So we changed the page and used that. Now, the question that needed to be answered at that time was, is this woman, was she alive? Was she actually dying? And I don't know how we got the impression that she was not dead, that she was alive. But the question arose there.
Yeah.
Because it was the moment of explosion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we came away with the impression that she was still alive. Because if we knew she was dead, we would not have used the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2, people felt that it was active, but was not gory.
Yeah.
It didn't have too much blood. Yeah. So that was a good thing. And actually, it met all the conditions we had been debating all along. Everybody said, wow, there you are.
Yeah.
So we went with it. Very clear. Now, the things that emerged later. One, by around 4 a.m., we started getting... I went home very late, about 2:30, tried to sleep. I was struggling with sleep. So the CEO called me at about 4 a.m. Told me, where are you? Told him, I'm at home, I'm asleep. Man, wake up. Huh? Why? You need to go and change your paper. Told him, for what? You have not had, we're in a lot of trouble. You can't. But I told him, the paper is gone. It's 4 a.m. It's being sold. No, you need to recall it.
Yeah.
I said, we can't. We can't because of a picture. We'll deal with it. So he told me, but look at your social media. I was not a frequent visitor to social media, by the way, that time. So he told me, look at social media. The roof is falling in because of the picture you used. So I remember telling him, Chief, this is normal these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get these uproars. We'll deal with it when we get to the office. And it's going to cool down.
Yeah.
I'm saying this without looking at what they are saying.
Yeah.
But it's true. We had actually gone through a number of instances where our headline would cause such an uproar on social media.
Yeah.
And we had learned very quickly that not to overreact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give it time, it will cool down. So I told him, let's give it time. After all, our paper is on the streets. Yeah. Anyway, he called me again and told me things are bad. If I were you, I would come to the office. Let's sit and meet and see what to do about it.
Oh.
Yeah, it's now approaching 7.
Yeah.
I cut my sleep, bathe. The next thing I'm told, there's a meeting of a board committee. So I went, I joined in, and the rest is internal. But the long and short of it was felt that I had failed in my editorial decision making.
Yeah.
And that disciplinary action should be taken against me. Yeah. So I was suspended.
Okay.
Of course, it still raises the question because ordinarily, a failure in editorial decision making is not necessarily a disciplinary, should not be a disciplinary issue.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there are ways of penalizing you for it. Yeah. But you see, you could go either way. Did you intend, did you do it deliberately? Were you aware?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I could defend that picture even today, but I will acknowledge certain things. What it taught me was, one, I ticked all the boxes, and so did the editors I was with when we made chose that picture. And if you went by universal journalistic values, that's why it won an award.
Yeah.
Elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, they thought it was a great picture.
Yeah.
But what it taught me is that editorial content, images, written stuff, whatever you generate, TikTok videos, are only as effective as they are aligned to the cultural context.
Yes. Yes.
That they are meant for.
Exactly.
A great TikTok video in Africa could be very offensive in Russia.
Yes.
Yeah. So here we got into trouble not because we offended some professional principles. We got into trouble because, one, the person in that picture worked for the UN. She was part of an expatriate community. And they formed a very aggressive keyboard army.
Yes.
At 6 a.m. You know, and it's like the roof was falling in. They all knew her. They all had access to, their keyboards, laptops.
Yes.
And they were, it's just, these Kenyans on Twitter, this sort of thing. You would think all Kenyans are angry with the New York Times.
Yes.
When people are even asking you, New York Times from Mnyamagani?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the effect we suffered that day. They were aggressive, and they pushed action, decisions that, decisions I think were made to appease, rather than on the basis of whether or not. That was my view.
Okay.
Because I've seen it since. I call it the tyranny of social media.
Yeah.
I've seen it since. No less a paper than the New York Times, which has very clear guidelines, has hallowed institutions of governance, has found itself being manipulated by social media opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, manipulated opinion. And I had to fire their op-ed editor for running commentaries which may have been offensive, but reflected a diversity of opinion,
Yes.
which is what media is supposed to do.
Yes.
Media should reflect a diversity of opinion.
Mhm.
You should carry opinions you don't agree with.
Yes.
And I was horrified when the New York Times, caved in and fired an op-ed editor.
Yeah.
Not for writing the opinion, for actually deciding to publish it.
To publish it, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm citing that it is happening all over. Right now, the same New York Times is going through, is it Washington Post? Going through a debate about the coverage of trans.
Yes.
Yeah. Of the trans community.
Yeah.
And at the heart of that debate is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you only accommodate what you agree with? Yeah. Because the paper is being denounced for the way it covers trans.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are saying, if you disagree with the way we cover trans, does that amount to creating a hostile working environment? Yeah, we can argue about an editorial decision.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And does that, if I cover trans in a particular way, just ask, have I covered it in a manner that is editorially acceptable?
Yes.
Rather than accuse me of being biased against trans.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll have my own opinion about the trans community.
Yes.
Yeah. But does that opinion, is it reflected in the story that I wrote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the picture, in my view, we chose it on the basis of what we would have done, guided by our journalistic values. Mm-hmm. To think about the cultural context of the marketplace, of the people who are reading your material. That we did not at the time. And we couldn't have. No, we didn't know the background of that woman.
Yeah.
The reality is that we put out a picture of her at the moment of her death.
Oh.
To people who knew her very well, and they felt her privacy had been invaded. Quite rightly.
Yes.
If it was my father and you did that, I would have reacted exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Exactly the same way. Yeah.
Wow. So did you feel, what was the impact of this? So you're suspended. There are obviously decisions that have been made around editorial values. How did you feel personally about this? It's
so funny that I did not actually feel, I was so sure that they were making the wrong decision. Management was making the wrong decision. It didn't, funny, I was so much at peace with myself.
Okay.
Yeah. I sat down my family. I told them this is what has happened. I'm on suspension, but I know I'll be vindicated eventually. Yeah. And it was not, funny enough, I was not even in a panic.
Okay.
That I've lost my job, how am I going to feed myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, deep down, I felt, no, I'm going to win this thing.
Yes.
Deep down. Yeah. I mean, I've had occasion to evaluate everything since then, from a professional point of view. And I've had this sort of discussions with other people. I mean, I teach at the Aga Khan University, and that picture is every class, every year. I really have to go and defend it. I didn't know it was such a landmark event in journalism.
It was a defining moment for journalism in Kenya, because it all gave us pause. It gave all of us pause for thought.
Yeah.
And especially those of us who've had the opportunity to choose the page one images and, write the page one headlines.
Be careful, do not end up like Odindo again.
No, I mean, so you did teach us about the importance of context.
Yes.
When you're choosing these images and words.
Yes. I think you asked about the impact. I think the impact for many people at the time was, one, suspending the editorial director had a chilling effect on the newsroom.
Yes.
And I don't know whether they realized the impact it had. But they really shook the confidence of the media team. Some of us, people have different leadership style. I may be wrong, but I see myself as an inspirational leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't manage a team. I have a very special relationship with my team. And I like being friends with the people I work with. And so they respect you professionally, but they also trust you as a brother.
Right.
And here you are, you represent everything they aspire to. And suddenly they're being told that's rubbish. Yeah. I think that really shook the confidence of the team.
Yeah.
Two, and this you are taught in management, that employee loyalty is often based a lot on how they see other workers treated.
Yes.
Yeah. So if, for instance, I don't know what example to cite, people tend to judge their value to the employer by the way they see the employer, the way the employer is treating somebody else. And in management, we're always told, be careful how you handle one person because it sends signals to everybody else.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that for the journalists for whom work is more than just a job.
Yeah.
It's a calling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one place, the Nation Newsroom is one of places I know that if something happened of national significance, people just arrived in the newsroom. You didn't have to call them.
Yeah.
They were just there.
Yeah.
They hear that there's been this disaster. Someone has just left, interrupts their leave, and they say, I'm here. What can I do?
Yeah.
So work is more than just a transaction. It is a calling. It's something people do as a way of life. Now, for people like that, when they feel that their efforts are repudiated and they're even penalized when they had tried their best and they did something in good faith, it has a very deep impact.
Yeah.
Now, the long and short of that incident was a higher body sat down and said, this is an editorial matter. It cannot be disciplinary.
Yeah.
And I simply went back to work.
Okay.
Yeah. But as I say, for me, I never even looked at it at the time as failure.
Yeah.
Until I started getting involved in a lot of this kind of conversations.
Right.
I mean, I would go to panels and forums, and I didn't know that is one of the things, the reason they had invited me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to debate.
So it's a point of study.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I reflected on it. Yeah, and I reflected on it and said, one, it's good to have some very clear basis on which you make editorial decisions.
Yes.
And the Nation is very strong on that. It has institutions. There's a very deeply ingrained culture of professionalism. A lot of things are not written, but the people share the same values. That's a good thing about the Nation.
Yeah.
Two, there's a very good defined relationship between the business managers and editorial. And I have to say, my CEO at the time, Linus Gitai, he tried his best to handle that thing. He was a very sensitive, but very conscientious leader. Very conscientious leader. Yeah, he did the best in that situation. Just that it's not something that involved him as a one person. Yeah, and the fact that one team made one decision and another team overturned it, I think signifies something.
Right.
Yeah. Three, in terms of the content itself, all I could tell people is that journalism is for the community it is meant for.
Yes.
First and foremost.
Yes.
Yeah. Content is for the audience you intend it for. Yeah. Think about the impact you intend, but think about the unintended consequences. Yeah. Unintended consequences. And that's a whole area of I think of journalism, the decision making in journalism, content selection, which many of us picked up skills on, but you are not sat down and told this is the A, this is the B. Of course, there are editorial policies, but a lot of things you just have to go through. You read remarks from a politician about this community which is uncircumcised,
Yeah.
but you react on the basis of this is not right. Yeah, it's not something you can rationalize.
Yeah.
But you just say, yeah, I couldn't stand in a marketplace and say this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, and especially in the era of digital media, I think what that incident to me would illustrate is think about the social impact and even political of what you are putting out. It's not just the entertainment you want to provide.
Yeah.
But what are the likely negative consequences? Yeah, of this.
So my final question, if you could go back in time Would you make that decision exactly like you did?
No, if I knew that that woman was part of a community at the UN,
Yeah.
which I didn't know,
Yes.
that she has she has a network of friends and relatives, yeah? um, which again I should have taken into account.
Right.
Because if she died at Westgate, then she must have friends and relatives in Kenya.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And we should have applied the same rule that we would apply to, you know, an African mzee who has been run over
Yeah.
by a car
Yeah.
on Jogo Road.
Yeah.
Would you show his face? No? We should have applied the same
Yeah.
principle. I think in our rush, in our deadline rush, we looked more at the picture as editorial content,
Right.
rather than as fodder for discussion the next day.
Yeah.
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 I would, if I had to choose pictures again, I would not choose it for one reason, that using it is an invasion of the privacy of certain people.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it is the same thing that if the same picture was about an incident in New York, I would feel less restraint at using it, because the victim would be unknown to people
exactly
here. For the same reasons that famine victims here are put on the front page of the New York Times.
Yeah.
Because you are just the other,
Yes.
as it were.
It's a disparate image.
Yeah, you are not known.
Away, yeah.
You just represent something. You represent suffering.
Yeah.
You present hopelessness.
Yes.
And that's what they want to convey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I feel like I've just been to journalism school. I'm about to run off and open my own newspaper now. It's been so much knowledge and wisdom.
Thank God you don't have to open a newspaper. They are long gone. They belong to history.
Well, this is true. Well, so I just want to say thank you very much for
Yeah.
gracing us with your time, with your wisdom, with your knowledge, with your insights.
Yeah.
And we certainly hope to see all of you next week for another episode of The Failure Effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay.